Welcome to the JP Podcast. I'm your host, John, and today is a very special show for me because it's the year anniversary, and of course I brought back our first guest that we had at Tony from the Coast Guard video, but it wasn't my first video. We had talked about that.
Right.
You were actually number 3, my first to due to technical difficulties. They actually didn't turn out good because of the voice. I got great video, but no soundtrack on them. So
I was the first video on.
Yeah, you were the
I
very
believe is what it was.
very first video on, and it did pretty well. I was very excited with it, but I got a lot of comments afterwards. People were texting me and they wanted to hear some more crazy stories about what went on in the Coast Guard there. And I know you and I had talked, your daughters were going to watch this, so you didn't want to give out certain specific details, which I understand, but we'll get to that. The subscribers have gone up. I think when we started, we had maybe 1 subscriber, 2, which was probably me and you. And, we're up to 250 now, so we're very excited. Thank you, everybody, for that. A lot has gone on. We went from this format. I haven't done this format in a while, to sit down. It actually took me a minute to figure out how to hook everything up because we've gone to the Zoom style, which I like, and also getting out and recording, on the road or at a location, which is awesome, so we like that too. Brought Tom in, and then brought Crystal in also. They bring 2 different things to the show, and one we haven't seen yet, which is actually going to be the 2 of them, is she's very knowledgeable in sports. She follows Cleveland sports, and she's awesome when she starts talking sports. So I do want to do a show eventually on that. I want to, get them together. I want to get together with another podcast group, maybe the Cleveland Pulse. They're from this area, and I collaborate with them a lot. Other things is we're going to be putting bloopers and video clips throughout the video, that keep this interesting for everyone. One thing I wanted to mention, I ask everybody to make comments. When they do make comments, they're just giving me a text or telling me in person. But one of the shows I had told a nice story about catching the crabs in the service and how I got rid of them. We had put it to the point if somebody would have commented on the video about that story, we were going to give them a $50 gift card. So nobody said anything, and we came up to the year mark, and you got to look out for stuff like that. If you see a funny story or you just make a comment, you might be commenting on something that, we have a little thing behind it, So I was kind of hoping somebody would. I was getting mass texts about this story. It was on that Recap Breakdown 3. And I just wanted to see if anybody was going to, comment about it. It was actually a funny story. So, but speaking of funny or crazy stories, being in the military, it's a combination of different things. One is, the serious stuff when you're doing the actual job that you went in there for, and there's some crazy stuff, wartime stuff. But then there's some stories when you're on some downtime, or even when you're involved in something, you see a lot of crazy things in the service, right? Did you see anything?
Yeah, obviously you're talking downtime and, wartime. Coast Guard's a little different, especially when I was in 94 to 98.
Uh-huh.
So, yeah, downtime, it's serious, especially with the life-saving and that. So when there's downtime, it's nice to kick back and relax and blow some of that, shall we say, steam off that you build up through the day or through the weeks.
Okay. Now, you were stationed, I remember you were saying you were stationed in a couple places. What was the first one you were stationed in?
Well, I wasn't in the States. I was on the Great Lakes for both times. It was the first one I was Coast Guard Cutter Bristol Bay out of Detroit, Michigan.
Okay.
Which is a buoy tender / icebreaker.
Uh-huh.
It was a 140-foot class icebreaking tug. And
Okay.
it was one of 2 in the Coast Guard that pushed a barge.
Okay.
So that's what we did aids to navigation with. So springtime and fall, we did aids to navigation, which are your buoys and stuff. In the summer times, we'd rehab lighthouses.
Okay.
And then winter we spent ice breaking. So the barge would sit in Detroit in the wintertime and just the tug would go out and break ice.
How was that, the ice breaking?
Actually, I enjoyed the ice breaking more than anything.
Okay.
It was a small crew. We stayed out a little longer. And it's weird. It gets peaceful. It's for as loud as it is, it's one of those sounds that gets very peaceful and very calming in your head.
Okay.
As you do it, it's one of those things that puts you to sleep actually at the end of the day.
Wow.
Now, if you went below deck, that's a different story. When you're below deck, below the main deck, and down where the hull is, and where the ice is being broke, that's loud and kind of sucks.
So these boats of course, they're set up to do this stuff. They might have double thick hulls or something like that.
Yeah, mostly on that boat, it was the front of the hull, the front of the boat, the bow was reinforced. Most icebreakers, the way they're designed is they ride up on the ice and they actually break the ice with their weight.
Okay.
Rather than just ramming them. We could back and ram, as they call it, but it's not the way the boat's designed. It's more designed to ride up and break it with the weight.
Okay, so the boat goes up, puts
Yeah,
the weight on
rides
it,
up,
and then
the weight eventually just breaks.
Ever gets stuck or anything like that?
Yeah, that's common. Actually, they call them windrows. Out there on the lakes, the wind will switch, and the ice will push on top of each other. And when it piles like that, if it's a couple feet thick, frozen, and then you get a pretty good push, and you get 4 or 5, 6 feet, yeah, you could get stuck real easy. The key is not to get stuck when there's a freighter a couple feet behind you, because that's bad situation, and I've actually seen that happen.
So how frozen does it get? I know the lakes, Lake Erie's not that deep, but the other lakes are, considerably deep.
Yeah, they all freeze. I think Lake Erie froze this year close to 100%. We don't get the ice we used to.
Okay.
Now, when I was in, we still got a lot of ice. Most of the big lakes up north freeze kind of quick and 100%, and they'll get a couple feet of ice on them pretty quick. Lake Erie hasn't, being shallower and stuff, it hasn't been freezing like it used to. So it usually doesn't freeze 100%, and it usually doesn't get super thick like it used to.
So you're just breaking the shipping routes pretty much.
Pretty much. Right up until January is when the freighters start laying up, because that's when the locks at both ends start to close.
Okay.
But you'll still have the tugs and barges and some smaller boats that go from the lakes that don't need the locks. So you kind of break all winter, but most of it's like December, January, and then starts again around March and April when the locks start to open up again. Because you'll have, the one year I remember breaking ice into May.
Oh, wow.
And especially in the rivers. The St. Clair River was clogged with ice till May, April, end of April, beginning of May. I mean, it was clogged up pretty good. So it all depends, but yeah, it's could be long.
Okay.
Season. And then the other place I was at was Marblehead, Station Marblehead, which is up the island. So
Yeah, I love Marblehead.
yeah, it's a very pretty place. It's a great place to be.
And after they would break these routes, how long would it take before, I'm sure it has something to do with the weather, but how long would it take before they would freeze right back up? Or were they pretty good once you broke them?
Oh no, you constantly continue to break them.
Okay.
There was 2 types of things we did on the breakers. We did what they call track maintenance, which is where you break a track and then you just keep it open for when the freighters came. And then there was direct escort, which is when one of them will get stuck and you just stay with it from port to port.
Would they ever get stuck out there and you had to go out there and break it?
Oh yeah,
break
they get
your way
stuck
to
all
them?
the time.
Oh yeah.
Well, especially, and it's weird because you talk about boats anywhere between 600 and 1,000 feet long, as far as the lake freighters are concerned.
Yeah.
And that's a big boat to get stuck, but the problem is usually they're loaded, so they're under. So like I was telling you, icebreakers are riding up and breaking with their weight.
Yeah.
These boats can't because they're loaded and they're so big, so they get stuck quite often, actually.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's.
I don't want to be any part of that. How about civilians? Would you find any? I guess the question should be, I know a lot of people do ice fishing, so as you're out there breaking these, would you run across them?
Not really. Usually where your shipping lanes are, you don't have people out fishing that far. I do remember a couple times breaking up around the island area because of where the shipping channel runs and sometimes where you got to go through. I remember hearing that there were a lot of ice fishermen pissed off because the way we ran to run our track kind of put their ice in jeopardy.
Yeah.
Softened it up and kind of moved it. And,
wow.
One of the things with the ice fishermen, and having a background from a father that was a charter boat captain and actually owned an ice fishing business at one point,
Okay.
is when your lake doesn't freeze, and the wind changes and you get cracks, your ice will actually move out.
Okay.
So that's something they watch. So you get a breaker coming through, and we break a bunch of ice up, and the lake's not frozen. All of a sudden, if you get a weird wind change, it could push their ice away, which means their shanties are gone if they're not paying attention, stuff like that.
Yeah, and they get out there, don't they? They go out there pretty far sometimes.
Yeah, you go a couple miles, and then, you got people that do live on the island, South Bass and that, and you have charter boat, people that own fishing businesses that, take people out year round. People fly in and then go out from the island. In fact, in between the islands will freeze before a lot of the other lake will. So they're able to go out and they get a little thicker ice than like somebody from the mainland. So they do a lot more ice fishing and stuff out there on the islands.
That's crazy. I couldn't do that. Not that far. If you want to go out 20, 30 feet, I'm okay with that. But I don't see myself getting way out there as far as miles away from the shore.
It's not that bad when you're doing it. Well, maybe it was because I was a kid and I was kind of raised with it. But
yeah,
I've never minded the ice. I know a lot of people do.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those things that, and if you listen to like ODNR or the Coast Guard, they're always going to tell you no ice is safe.
Mm-hmm.
But if you know what you're doing and you pay attention and you're not doing stupid things, it's not that. It's kind of like being on a boat.
Okay.
I have a big thing about being on a boat. Being on a boat, it's safe and it's fun and it's great. But the minute you start doing stupid stuff and being there's a chance you're going to get hurt or you're going to hurt somebody, So, which was a lot of what I did at the station, saving people that were doing stuff that they probably shouldn't have been doing or not paying attention to things.
So they would get pissed when you would do your trek right between their
sometimes.
shanty and the shore, huh?
Yeah, sometimes. Like I said, depending where you were,
Now, how are they getting out there? They taking little ATVs?
ATVs, snowmobiles. Yeah. I know when I was a kid, I can remember we would mark roads with trees, Christmas trees.
Okay.
And you can actually... And people would drive from the islands to the mainland in cars and trucks.
Oh, that's crazy.
And stuff like that. Because we used to get that kind of ice and it would freeze that
That's crazy.
thick. Yeah.
I couldn't do that.
I don't think it does it anymore. I wouldn't do it anymore. But
you think the weather is changing considerably since then? I mean, as far as this global warming, you think that has a lot to do with it?
I'm not a believer in global warming.
Uh-huh.
But I would say it's very possible we're in a cycle, and I think that has a lot to do with it because, like I said, I've noticed from being a kid till now, it is a lot different out there.
Okay.
So something's going on, something's changed, but...
someone had a question about that. What has changed as far as the service since you've been in? Do you talk to anybody who's in it now or recently? Try and compare it to when you were in?
I haven't talked to anybody in a long time. I think the biggest switch when I was talking to people was, the Coast Guard went from Department of Transportation to Department of Homeland Security.
Okay.
After 9/11. And at that point, their mission changed.
Okay.
I shouldn't say changed. It went more towards protective than... I mean, they still do life-saving and all that, but from what I understand, the main focus was, more of protecting and terrorism and things like that.
So when you were in, would you go from one base to another? Had you ever went from, you say you were up in the Great Lakes, did you ever go down for some training, just say in Florida or anything like that? Or were you always in the Great Lakes area?
I personally was stationed just in the Great Lakes area, but yeah, you could. It's like any other branch of the service, the way it's ran.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's training opportunities. Like some people went away for school, A school,
uh-huh.
Things like that. And depending where, depends where you go. But
yeah, because what I'm trying to say is like when I was at just say Fort Lewis, Washington, which is in Washington State up by Seattle, and then we would go training in just say California. And we would hit an Air Force base in California, and it was like, wow, this. Even though Fort Lewis was nice, California was awesome.
Yeah.
Their base is there, so, that's basically what I was asking. Now, any other stories coming in from the icebreaking? would you find people stranded? What if people were stranded? I believe you have the helicopters, but would you take a boat out to them ever? An icebreaker?
Well, when I was not an icebreaker, but when I was at Marblehead, we were one of the ice rescue stations.
Okay.
So yeah, you'd bring the helicopters, and then we didn't have per se a boat to take out. We had some rowboats, and at one time they had an airboat, kind of like what you see on the Everglades.
Oh, wow.
And I don't know what they're using now. I think they have some stuff now, like hovercraft and stuff like that,
Okay.
to try to help and get out there. So yeah, it was the helicopters, and we would run out there, and we would actually pull little skiffs behind us in case there was open water or we hit a dangerous spot. So that was kind of the thing. But yeah, you're not taking. I mean, you're not taking a breaker out to save people.
Yeah.
I mean, that's.
I'm sorry, I'm ignorant about
Yeah,
these.
no,
Were they pretty big, these breakers?
Well, the one I was on was one of the smaller ones, and that was 140 feet.
Wow. So when you would go out on the ice, and would you find anybody having parties out there instead of fishing? You know, like I was an MP, and what I'm saying is we would have some runs that were close to the woods, and we would see a car, so we'd go back there, and these people are doing some crazy stuff in these cars. We would find a lot of that.
Yeah, not ice breaking. When I was stationed at Marblehead, summertime, you know, that area's a big party area. So, you know, that was when I was at Marblehead. It was a search and rescue station, and that was the primary focus. But you also did a lot of law enforcement and boardings and things like that. So, in the summer, anybody that's been up there, Put in Bay, you know, Marblehead, you know, that's a big party area. So that was summertime. That was Marblehead. That's mostly what I did, was deal with the fine public having a good time.
Yeah.
In the summers on boats and land. And back then that was, you know, like I said, 94 to 98 I was in. So marine patrols and things like that were just becoming popular. So being at Marblehead, we ran or helped like all the local law enforcement with any of their water stuff. So Put in Bay didn't have anything. If they had fights or problems on the docks, they'd call us. Kelly's Island at the time, we did all their prisoner transports and medical transports and helped them with anything that happened at the docks because they didn't have a marine unit. Port Clinton, same thing. You know, you're always helping because they didn't have it back then. Now a lot of places do have marine units now, but back then it was just us and ODNR really. So if it was on the water, it was one of us handling it.
That's crazy. That is crazy. Yeah. So you're basically law enforcement out there. You consider a federal law enforcement?
Yeah, you're federal
that's
there.
what I had a feeling. Yeah, you don't want to get in trouble with the Coast Guard.
No, you don't. A lot of it, to be honest with you, a lot of things they do, they pass off to the local municipality because it is federal.
Yeah.
You know, like BUIs or boating under the influence, just like driving. We would do a lot of the testing and stuff, but if we could get ODNR watercraft to take it over or a local municipality, we would instead of pursuing it.
And you're stopping boats and you're boarding them, right?
Yeah, you're stopping and boarding them. You're doing safety checks, you know, things like that. And you run across a lot of people drinking, doing that. It's kind of like field sobriety checkpoints out, you know, here on the land where they're just stopping random people out on the water. It's deemed, you know, a safety check, which we are. You're checking life jackets and flares and all that, but you know, like I said, summertime on a boat, having a good time, you run across a lot of people drinking.
And then they're not stocked with the safety stuff sometimes, right?
Sometimes they're not. Sometimes you could just tell by talking to them when you're asking them where their life jackets are, and they don't know where their life jackets are.
That's crazy.
And you're like, well, maybe this guy's been drinking.
Yeah, that's crazy. And
So-
you would just tow them in sometimes?
Yeah, if nobody's on the boat that can drive, you get them to shore somehow, and then, you know, go from there.
And nothing crazy like guns, finding guns, people, you know.
No, we had a couple pop busts up there at Marblehead. One was an accidental. Two boats collided basically right in front of the station.
Wow.
We didn't even get a call about it. We had, because we would stand a radio watch, and the radio watchstander was actually looking out this big bay window we had in the radio room and saw the two boats hit. And it hit the alarm, and the boat crews went out and just happened to find pot floating in the water by one of the boats in an open case. And, you know, it's like, okay, now it's a problem.
Wow, that's crazy. That's crazy. So you did tell me one time you did one of your jobs was body recovery. We didn't talk about that in the last episode, but I wanted to get a little more into it without getting too gory, because I know some of the stories you have told me, and I did mention at the time. I knew somebody that was missing, and they finally found them, and you were explaining to me the different things on what happens to a body when, you know.
Right.
So when you come across a body or somebody that was missing in the wintertime, you said they would just sink completely,
Yeah.
and it would be a while before you would have to wait for things to warm up before you could find them.
Right. The only reason a body floats is the gases inside the body when they build up.
Uh-huh.
And if the water's cold, you don't build gases. If you check on Lake Superior, which is the biggest of the Great Lakes, and it's also the deepest, there's an old saying about Lake Superior that Lake Superior doesn't give up her dead.
Yeah.
And the reason is because she's so deep and she stays so cold. When you drown or your boat sinks or whatever happens, you don't have a chance to build up the gases and basically bloat and float.
Mm-hmm.
So in the smaller lakes, if you go in when the water's cold, you're generally going to be down until the water warms up.
Yeah.
And that's, could be anywhere from a couple months to longer.
Yeah, that's probably why Lake Erie, everything starts warming up, and then you start seeing bodies all of a sudden.
Yeah,
that have
sometimes.
been missing for a while.
Yeah, sometimes. It could take, that's one of the reasons. Because the lakes always stay kind of cold. I mean, even now, what's the lake, 60, 70 degrees?
I guess.
Something
Yeah.
like that. It's not like it ever gets 80, 90 degrees in the lake. So,
Yeah, I believe you did mention you still in the summertime can get hypothermia.
you can, depending how long you're in.
Yeah, that's crazy.
How long you're in the water, because it's basically your core temperature, your body is going to come down to the water the longer you're in the water.
Yeah.
So if it's July and the water's 74 degrees, your body temperature core is 98 degrees. You have till you start dropping past a certain level,
Now,
and that's hypothermia.
Body recovery, how was that as a job? I mean, are you guys? Of course, you're waiting for calls. Or do you know there's bodies missing? Are you going out? Do you have sonar set up, or what are you doing? As a body recoverist.
Well, it depends. Sometimes you're there because it's an active case that starts off as you saw a flare or somebody saw somebody sinking,
Mm-hmm.
or or somebody who didn't return from somewhere. So you're out there running a case, an active case where it is a search and rescue. And then there's a time period where it goes from a search and rescue to a body recovery. A lot of them, to be honest with you, are people call and say, hey, there's a body floating.
Oh, wow.
The first body I ever picked up kind of just popped up in front of us. I was on a tug, and we had dropped our barge off for a shipyard period in Wisconsin, and we were following a freighter down the St. Clair River, and the freighter was kicking up a bunch of muck off the bottom, and a body popped up.
Wow.
And as we came up on it, we saw it, and now all of a sudden we're in body recovery.
Jeez.
Whereas when I was at the search and rescue station, like I said, it was more of you're either out there because you're on the case as a search and rescue, and then it turns to recovery, or sometimes it's a few days after you've had an accident or happen to have somebody go missing, and then somebody will call and say, hey, there's a body floating over here, and then you go out.
So how are you getting these bodies out? What is the process of that?
You're grabbing them and pulling them out.
Really?
Yeah, it depends. The first one, he had been down a couple months, if I remember correctly. And that one was a little more complicated. We had put our small boat in the water because it was easier to keep the small boat by it than the tug. And we actually turned the tug around and go back because we're waiting on the Macomb County Sheriff to come out, and they were going to take it back to shore for us. And we actually had to go lift the body out with our small boat crane because it was so bloated and full of water.
Oh.
So, on a big boat like that, we used the crane.
Uh-huh.
When I was at the search and rescue station, you usually just reached over and grabbed them and pulled them on board the boat.
See, I couldn't do that. Not physically put my hand on somebody. When I was an MP, and they always told us about that, we were the first to arrive. Sometimes we would beat the ambulance, and just always hoping, like, please,
Yeah.
I don't want to.
At least
wanna
on
deal
land, you
with it.
can usually leave them and wait for, whoever's going to investigate. With us, it's you got to grab them and bring them back.
You're the one.
Yeah, if you don't,
Yeah.
where are they going?
Yeah, that's
They're
crazy.
going somewhere else in the lake or over the falls.
And I'm sure they get pretty heavy coming up, don't they?
They do. The longer you're in,
Yeah.
the longer they're in, the heavier they get. That's why that guy that we picked up in the river, that's why we had to use a small boat crane to pick him out. Is he was too heavy for the guys to pick up on the small boats, so we had to use our small boat crane, pick him up, and set him on the sheriff boat and let the sheriff handle it from there.
Yeah, I don't know if I could deal with that. I give you a lot of respect for doing that. I mean, somebody has to do it, but I'm kind of glad it's not me.
It's not fun.
I'm sure it's not.
It's part of the job.
Yeah.
But it's not fun. It's probably the least fun of everything I did.
And you would find quite a bit. Were you getting when you were doing body recovery? It was quite a bit of calls.
I didn't pick up a lot of bodies. I guess I don't know what a lot of bodies is. What's a lot of bodies? You know what I mean?
One a day.
Yeah, no, it wasn't like that. I mean, the year and a half, 2 years I was at Marblehead, we did a couple.
Okay.
And then one on the icebreaker, and like I said, that was kind of more of an accident than anything. But like I said, at that time in the Coast Guard, search and rescue is the primary duty of all the units, even if you're an icebreaker. Mm-hmm. If you can go out, it's just harder to get a 140-foot boat underway for a lot of search and rescue. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, so I only did probably 4 or 5 in 4 years, somewhere around there. Most of them were at the search and rescue station because that's the nature of the beast. Luckily, most of them turn out well.
Yeah.
Most of them, not all of them, but most of them.
Would you ever go for a search to find somebody and they're alive, they're out there waving at you like, hey?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's happened a few times. We pull a few, you hear boats sinking or, whatever, and you go rushing out there. And either boat's just going under or, it's just gone under and they're just getting in the water. I remember picking a guy up by Kelly's Island like that. His little boat capsized and sank, and he was treading water, and we pulled up on him, and here he is, and treading water and waving and screaming, and
I bet
come alongside, grab him, and yank him in the boat.
Happy to see you
very
guys.
Happy individual, very happy individual.
Yeah, I saw a show one time. It was a documentary about a ship. It was a cargo ship or something. I forget. Anyways, the ship went down. This couple were in the ocean for a long time, and they had only one life preserver between the two of them, so they were sharing. And when they finally found him, it had been a couple days. When they finally found him, she collapsed out of exhaustion, and he had to run laps around the ship because he was so full of adrenaline.
Yeah.
That to calm down. And I could just imagine, like you're in that situation, and finally you're being saved.
That's very lucky to last that long.
Yep.
I would say that's a rarity.
Yep.
You know what I mean? You're not being in the water, temperature, cramping, tiredness. That's a rarity. Last couple days in the water like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can see being very happy.
Yeah. Okay, when you were on downtime and you were back at the base, where were you located? Meaning, what was your duty area? Meaning, like, was it a dock? Was it a building?
Yeah, well, it obviously depends on where you are, whether you're on a ship or you're like a small boat station. Coast Guard does have like groups, some land stations too, ashore units they call them. So when I was on the Bristol, we tied up at what was called Group Detroit, which was us, a small 8-ton boat, a smaller 8-ton boat, I should say. I think it was 60 foot. I don't remember the name of it. And then we had the group building, and with the group building, there was a small shop where they did some small boat engine repair and things like that for local stations. Because the way the Coast Guard's broke up is the U.S. is broke up into districts. The district is broke up into groups. The groups are broke up into stations or units. So Great Lakes was, I don't know anymore, was District 9 when I was in. And then the local groups were Group Detroit, Group Buffalo, and then, like I said, then depending where you were, depends on who you reported to. So when I was on the Bristol and at Marblehead, we actually reported to Group Detroit. Even though, one unit was in Michigan, one unit was in Ohio. So the group, like I said, they were in charge of the different units. So you have a lot of, it's like your office people is who works at the group. And then, like I said, they had a small shop unit where they did some work for the stations and that, especially work on engines and boats and, things like that.
What about the chow hall? You have anything like that set up there?
It's a mess deck.
Okay.
Well, on the Bristol, it's the mess deck.
Uh-huh.
So it's a boat. I don't know what they had at the group because I don't think they had cooks and stuff there because you were just there for an office job.
Okay.
So, like, they worked. I mean, they had a duty section who had to stay overnight, but generally I think it was just, mostly office people, and they were there from 7 to 3 or whatever. On the Bristol, we had a mess deck and cooks and stuff.
How was the food?
When I was there, we had some pretty good cooks. I can't lie. And then when I was at Marblehead, too, I had some pretty good cooks. So it depends on, that's one of those things that it's going to depend on where you go and who it is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not, because the cook in the Coast Guard it's a rate. At the time, it was SS Subsistence Specialist. And they're transferring just like the other ranks every 2 to 3 years. So, you're getting new ones in, new ones out. And so I was always taught when I first got in, there was 2 people you didn't piss off, the storekeeper of the unit and the cook.
Yeah.
Storekeeper is the one that handles all your paperwork, including your pay and all that. And then the cook, because they're cooking 3 meals a day for you. Those are the 2 people you don't piss off.
That's pretty much the same as the Army was. Yeah. I remember it was good food. And, you hit a couple places that it was bad, But other than that, I don't remember the food being horrible, but it was pretty good.
Weird thing about the Coast Guard is depending where you were, what type of unit you were at, you might have to pay for your food. So, like, when I was at Marblehead, I actually paid for my food. You pay per meal. It's not a lot.
Yeah.
$1 something for lunch, $2 or $3 $1 something for breakfast, $2 or $3 for dinner and lunch. When I was on the Bristol, being what they considered an afloat unit, which means the boat was underway, away from home port so many days a year, they actually give the boat money to buy food.
Okay.
So
you're not eating like MREs on the boat because you're out there all.
You're not eating MREs at either place.
Okay.
In the Coast Guard, to be honest with you. I mean, we had MREs on the boats, but we didn't eat them. We never.
Yeah.
I mean, you could do some long search tracks and things like that, But after 12 hours on the boat, they would shut you down for 12 hours.
Okay.
So you're never going to be on a boat for more than 12 hours. So you got to be pretty hungry to eat an MRE after 12
I hear
hours.
you.
I can usually wait till I get back to the station, and hopefully the cook put a plate away for me. And if not, there's going to be bologna or something that I'd rather eat than an MRE.
Yeah, I hear you. Because in the Army, we would sometimes stop at an Air Force base on the way somewhere, and they would tell us go eat over there, and their chow halls were just great compared to ours. It was just awesome. I used to love doing that. Even though we had great food, they had great food.
I will say that the food was, and I don't want to say better as in cooked, but we had a better quality food on the icebreaker.
Okay.
Than we did, say, at the station.
Okay.
Station was normal stuff. There was a lot of steaks and some seafood and stuff going on the icebreaker. You know what I mean? Like I said, because it's an underway unit, so the budget was a lot higher. So there was better grades of food, shall we say?
Never taken advantage of the walleye that was out there. Maybe some of the
No, you're not allowed to do that.
None of the perch.
Not allowed to do that.
No. What were some of the things, before we wrap it up? What were some of the things you guys would seize when you would make a stop on somebody? You said marijuana that one time, but what were some of the things that you would seize from people?
If you find somebody with a gun or things like that, you would seize it. Luckily, when I was there, we weren't doing a lot of that. But drugs is the main thing. Coast Guard, especially on the coasts, Florida, does a lot of drug interdiction work.
Yeah. I'm sure they do. I was thinking of the Great Lakes itself.
To be honest, there's not a lot of that going on the Great Lakes, at least not that you're chasing. Like I said, at Marblehead, it was more search and rescue. There was some work we do with ODNR for fisheries, because you got Canada and the U.S., So you got different rules as far as commercial fishing, netting, shall we say. So we'd help them out sometimes, ODNR, with some of the network and stuff like that, making sure that the Canadian gill nets weren't into Ohio waters and things like that. But went a lot to seas. Like I said, every so often you run across somebody with a little bit of pot.
Okay.
But you're not getting a ton of. There's no big cocaine smuggle going on the Great Lakes.
Yeah.
Nobody's smuggling cocaine from Canada to Ohio. At least not that often.
Yeah, well, they say these lakes they're worse in the ocean sometimes than these storms. So.
It used to be a thing. I know I used to hear a lot of stories about prohibition, especially up the islands area. Canada, when the U.S. was in prohibition, it was very easy to get liquor across from Canada to a lot of the islands and then to the mainland of the U.S. So I guess during that time it was a big deal trying to stop illegal liquor from coming into the U.S. But, there wasn't a lot of that going on when I was up there. So
just party people having fun out there.
A lot of partying. It's like I said, a lot of enforcing the little laws, the BUIs and things like that. Even with the pot, sometimes it is what it is.
Yeah. We have those islands here in, you're saying Marblehead. We do have a couple of big islands out there that everybody from this area, you can take what's that called? You get on it with your car and everything like that.
Yeah, ferry.
A ferry, I'm sorry. A ferry, you get over on the ferry and you can drive around. You don't even need to take the ferry. You can rent carts or whatever. But they're great islands,
Yeah.
People go there to party and it's just great.
It's overall a great area. I spent a lot of time in that area growing up, like I said, with my dad being a charter boat captain and that, and then with the Coast Guard. And between the partying and the things to do, and then if you hunt, if you fish, just that whole area, there's just so much to do. It's a good time in the summer. There's a lot of great hunting, a lot of great fishing to be had up there.
And I'm sure it's considered tourist season, so you guys are on a higher alert. There is a base on.
There's Coast Guard Station Marblehead.
Yeah. Okay.
It's going right in. It's right in downtown Marblehead, right at the.
So are you sitting there waiting for something, or are you guys out there patrolling
You're waiting, but you're patrolling.
at the same time? Okay.
Yeah, you're doing both. You're trying to show a presence.
Okay.
You're driving around. You're doing safety boardings. You're waiting on calls because you're monitoring. Like I said, we had somebody who was always on radio watch, and they're monitoring channel 16 on the radio. Waiting for people to call in emergencies and things like that.
And those boats are pretty fast.
Yeah, they're a lot faster now than when I was in.
Yeah,
they've upgraded quite a bit.
I met a guy who, when I had a job, I was dealing with veterans, and he was in the boats. I forget the name of them, but they would patrol the rivers in Vietnam.
Okay, yeah.
And he was telling me how fast they were.
Yeah.
He said they had like a jacuzzi engine in it. He was mentioning, and it just them boats would get up and go in a heartbeat. So
Yeah.
I always wondered if the Coast Guard had fast boats compared to everybody else. I mean, you would have to because of the rescue, but
Yeah, and like I said, they've upgraded quite a bit from when I was in. Before we worked together at the steel mill, I was in a shipyard. I worked at a shipyard, and it was kind of funny and strange. Everything kind of comes full circle. So the company I worked for bought a small aluminum boat building business in Wisconsin.
okay.
The shipyard was based in Wisconsin. And if I remember correctly, it was Ace Marine was the name of the company they bought. And they got a Coast Guard contract, and they were building boats for the Coast Guard. And when it came time for Cleveland Harbor to get a boat, it was a search and rescue boat. And when it came time for Cleveland Harbor to get their boat here in Cleveland, because they had a shipyard in Cleveland, they asked for a couple guys from the shipyard in Cleveland to go help run the sea trials with a guy from Wisconsin and the Coasties. So because I was in the Coast Guard, I was selected to go. Mm-hmm. And, they went from big boats that were kind of run with diesel engines to these jet propulsion, jet drive, things, and all aluminum. And so it got pretty serious. I mean, they got some fast boats. I know this boat I was on, it was joystick controlled, and I forget what size it was or what it was, but it was fast. Faster than anything I had been on when I was in.
Wow.
it was pretty scary.
Yeah, you're not outrunning them, especially with the radio, and you guys can call in a helicopter. You're not
no.
chasing down boats like they do, like you see down in the Gulf sometimes. You know, no, you're not outrunning them guys.
No, you're not. It's like trying to outrun the cops.
Yeah,
You know, they're just as fast as you with the radio, with the few exceptions. There's always a few exceptions.
yeah,
You know, the thing you could have going for you on the water is if you're ahead of them a good amount,
yeah.
you might be able to stay with them, but if away from them. But if they get close, no, you're not. Like you said, between helicopters and everything else, they're gonna get you.
Now, real quick, does Canada have their version of a Coast Guard?
They do. It's not It's not an armed service like it is here.
Okay.
It's, from what I've always been told, it's more like a federal job, more like a post office or a federal type job. Very relaxed rules, from what I was always told.
You never met up with them out there on the lake?
More breaking ice than anything else. They do have some cutters that they do buoys with and break ice with. Coast Guard, what was it? Coast Guard cutter Griffin, and I think the Risley were the two that were stationed. I think they were stationed in on the Detroit River. I'm trying to think of the little town. I can't remember the little town because we went to visit them once. When we tied up over there, we took a tour of one of them. I forget whether it was the Griffin or the Risley that we went on. We toured it when I was on the Bristol because we tied up at the Canadian Coast Guard base one of the times we're icebreaking.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so
you would tour each other's
yeah, if
pretty
we
much?
if we get around, yeah.
That's
if we're
pretty
around
cool.
each other, yeah. In fact, when I was in the Bristol, and a lot of the bigger Coast Guard boats, a lot of times they'd pull in the ports and they'd open up tours for the general public.
Okay.
Just pull up and
I have to go on one of those one of these days. I wonder if they do it still in Marblehead.
the station will probably let you walk around
Yeah,
if you asked.
Maybe we'll do a show and walk around. And
They had a cool, when I was in Marblehead, and I don't know if it's still there, they had a cool thing. It's called a phonetic or phenol lens. And it's actually one of the original lenses that was in Marblehead Lighthouse.
okay.
And it's a certain way the glass was cut back when it was still like a candle-lit lighthouse. And they had it at Marblehead.
Wow.
And it was pretty cool because it was pretty old. It's all made out of brass, and there's all this different cut shaped and the way they would place it, glass, and all this to make this candle shine miles out into the lake.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you're ever up there, I take a tour of Marblehead Lighthouse. There's some pretty cool stuff there.
Maybe we'll do that for the 2-year anniversary. You and
2
me
year.
we'll shoot up there and have you give us a tour of everything. But Tony, I appreciate it very much. It's very awesome. Here we are a year later, and I watched the episode the other day, and we were so serious.
Yeah,
and you know what I mean.
First time, and
Didn't know what to say, but
you've grown a ton since then. I mean, like you were saying, between adding 2 co-hosts and going on the road, I remember sitting down for the first one, and you're like, oh, I don't know, I got to hit this button and do this. And I just had 2 problems with audio and the video, and the first 2 didn't work out, so you're going to be the first one on there, and I hope I do everything right.
Yeah.
Now you're getting in cars and traveling around, and
yeah, we're learning as we're going along. I mean, it's still fun. We always need the subscribers, but we finally went over that 100 subscriber mark. We were very happy about that. But give the comments, put it on the video. You never know. Like I said, with the one time we had it out there with the crab story. If somebody would have said something, you would have got a $50 gift card. We do have. I keep track. I have analytics, and I'm keeping track of what people say. And we have the Instagram, we have the Facebook, and everything. So I've come up with another 4 people. So. That are constantly saying something or liking something, so it shows me who does the most. So those 4, I'm going to reach out to them and either get them a mug or a T-shirt. Crystal does a lot of the stuff for us. She has her own business. I'm going to be putting her information out, but if there's you want a T-shirt, just reach out and we'll work something out. It isn't 100% yet. That's still all coming out of my pocket. I haven't figured that part out.
Right.
I'm just doing all this stuff here, but we appreciate it. And I appreciate you, Tony. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Make sure to like and comment, and we need the more subscribers, and we totally appreciate everything, and happy anniversary to us, and thank you, Tony, for being a part of the show.
Thanks for having me on again. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you very much. Hello, thank you. Yes. And we are recording here, so go ahead and
1 second here. You ready?
Yep.
Nice.
Yeah.
That up. Fuck that up good.
There you go. Let me see. Let me do a couple
Poses?
yeah.
You look real tough.
That's what I'm trying to.
Your neck looks real thick. What is that one?
You do a couple poses in case he's got to take you. Dude,
I don't even know what poses do.
go like that. That's a good one there.
So stupid.
So let me mute my phone. And let's see. Okay, it is muted.
Nope, Eric's back.
Eric, you came right back. What happened? Can you hear us, Eric?
Yeah.
But you came back. How'd you come back?
You sent me the email.
Oh, no,
I had another.
Yeah, you had another one. I was trying to get you earlier, and it came back on. I'll send you another one. So you need to back out and be patient, okay? Because we haven't even started the show yet. So
All
right.
We're working on it. We're all new at this.
I love
All right.
Eric. Okay.
All right, I'll hop off.
All right.
Yeah, it says recording in progress, and I have to say, got it. Or leave.
Okay, and you should hear that or see that it's recording. So, all right. Welcome to the JP Podcast. I'm your host, John.
And I'm Crystal, your co-host.
Okay, welcome. And I screwed up. So we'll just...
Me too. I said my name first.
You said it perfect, so we'll do it
Okay.
again. We'll do it
All
again.
right.
So, lighting look good?
Everything looks great, and we're good.
You recording on that one too? All right. Okay, let's get this going. Welcome to the JP. Okay, we'll start it again.